We're on YouTube live with Greg Mercer. For any of you who don't know him, he is the Junglescout founder and CEO. He's probably the foremost knowledgeable person on Amazon FBA, in my humble opinion. He is the original mentor and person that I learned Amazon FBA from so many months ago. So we're very excited to have him, and we are going to be taking a super deep dive into product research, much deeper than anything else out there. We're going to be going into some of the very advanced topics just for you guys. And so we're going to kick it off right now because we had a little bit of a technical delay, but now we are getting started. So the first question for Greg is, when you see a difference between the Chrome extension of Junglescout and the Junglescout web app for the same product, what is going on there, and which data source should you trust?
All right. This is an excellent question. I feel like I'm having deja vu here. I feel like I just answered this now.
I know.
No worries. So to answer this, guys, I'm going to let you know where the data comes from. Okay, so when you're using the Junglescout extension, the data is pulled in directly from instantaneously, directly from the pages. Okay, so what I mean when I say that is when I hit the extension, it is in real time gathering all that information that it's showing you there. All right. And why I'm telling you this and why this is important, because in the product database, which is inside the Junglescout web app, it's a little bit different there. So we have a few 100 million products inside of our database, inside the Junglescout web app. And I guess what it comes down to is it's a technical thing. We can't query Amazon's API fast enough to bring in all that information to show you the results there. So instead, it takes 24 or 48 hours to go through and to update all of the products. Okay.
Right. Yep.
So the products in the product database, that's cached information. It might be 1 or 2 days old. Whereas with the extension, it's instantaneously, it's at that exact second. So, in the product database, it might say ranks a little bit lower, a little bit higher. It might say that there's only 10 reviews. When the extension, that means there's 12 reviews. It's okay, well, that just means they got 2 more reviews within the past day or 2. So,
right.
Yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So with the web app, it's 1 or 2 days behind just because they're organizing so much data, so much is coming in, right? Hundreds of millions of different products available on Amazon, right? The Chrome extension is taking an active query, right? So it might be 24 to 48 hours, a bit more accurate. Does that summarize things correctly, Greg?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, cool. So the second question for Greg is the Junglescout product tracker 100% accurate? With some of the other competitors out there to Junglescout who also have a product tracker feature, what's the difference between those two numbers that they might be showing? And could you just talk a little bit about the overall accuracy of the Junglescout product tracker?
Yeah, sure thing. It's a good question. So again, let's think about where this data comes from that helps us understand the accuracy. So if you don't know about the product tracker to start, it's inside the Junglescout web app, and you can add any product on any of the stores, whether it's North America or EU or whatever, and on a daily basis, it tracks the inventory. So I might add this glass to my product tracker, and it might say today my inventory is 900 units. We check inventory tomorrow, it's 950 units, and all we're doing here is we're asking Amazon to add 999 units to our cart.
Right. If
it's less than that, it comes back with an error and says, hey, you can't add 999 units to your cart. You can only add 900. So we know that person has 900 units in stock. So if there's only one seller and they have less than 999 units in stock, that particular method works extremely well.
Right.
It's very accurate. In that particular scenario, I'd say 99% of the time it's bang on and it's very accurate, okay? But there are some scenarios that can throw it off, and I'll let you know what we do to kind of help those. So One would be if there's multiple sellers competing for the buy box, because now what's happening is different sellers are rotating through the buy box. They have different amounts of inventory. So in this particular scenario, we just give you a warning that, hey, there's a different seller is rotating through the buy box. So just by looking at the difference of inventory isn't an accurate way to tell sales.
Right.
So in that particular scenario, we estimate sales based off the BSR. And the same thing happens if another thing that could throw it off, if people have reserved the max order quantity. So if a seller, as a seller, you can say, want to set a maximum of like 3 units for anyone to be able to purchase at one time.
Right.
So when that happens, again, it could throw off because we're trying to do this 999 trick thing.
Sure.
So again, in that particular scenario, we estimate sales for that day based off the BSR. So
Okay.
I'm pretty confident that ours would be more accurate than any of the competitors out there because as far as I know, all the competitors out there, none of them estimate sales based off BSR for the scenarios where the 9-9 trick doesn't work,
Right.
where Junglescout does. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of like the differences there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And all my students out there know all about max order quantity and how to protect your sales as far as, other competitors tracking your sales. So it's good to know what Junglescout is doing to provide more accuracy in some of those other kind of one-off cases where the 999 cart trick might not necessarily work.
Yep.
So thank you for that answer. So is it possible, next question, is it possible to use Junglescout kind of to identify trending products or, those kind of up and coming products, right? So could you have retrospectively maybe identified fidgets or, some of those products that are super hot or they're coming up and, if so, how would you go about using Junglescout to identify kind of some of those trending products?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the ways that I kind of like to do it, so this is like pretty hard to do, right? We're trying to spot like or predict future trends,
right?
Which of course everyone would love to do in anything, whether it's cryptocurrencies or the stock market or Amazon or whatever.
Right.
There are some ways that you can use Junglescout to help you do this. So of course, nothing can see into the future, but you can start to get some like early indicators that this could potentially be like a super hot product using Junglescout.
Okay.
So one way to do that would be like using the product database and find products that have very few reviews. And the reason that this is important is because that's an excellent indicator letting us know that it's a very young listing.
Right.
So a very young listing with lots of sales. So if it has like 3 reviews, but it's still doing like 1,000 sales a day or whatever,
right.
That tells us that like, this is like very young listing, but it's like selling like crazy. So it's like, oh, that's like a pretty good indicator. That's something you'd be thinking about. Like, okay, this could potentially be a good product. That in combination with, you can start like checking Google Trends. Like I've never looked at fidget spinners on Google Trends, but if we looked at it, it probably would have been like flat, like 0, nothing.
Right. And then up to 100.
All of a sudden, like a super high spike, right?
Right.
So that'd be like a good way to kind of like validate that. So yeah, that's kind of like one of the ways that you can start to do it.
Right.
Nothing's going to be able to do this perfectly,
right.
Or else I'd be like a billionaire. But yeah, that's like a way that you can start to identify like new trending products.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I actually never really thought about it like that, right? Low amounts of reviews with a super high sales, especially like within a short period of time since the listing creation, is a great indicator, and you heard it from Greg directly, so it must be true. So next question, how do you see, you've been around for a little bit with the Amazon FBA scene, right? How do you see the Amazon FBA landscape changing kind of since you started, and what can people do maybe to stay a bit ahead of the curve?
Yeah, really good question. And I like these sets of questions you have here, Kevin, because this is a little bit more like deep thinking, or kind of like ask my opinion on like the future stuff. So I like that. That's
absolutely
cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So now for I don't know, like 4 or 5 years, right? So when I first got started, I was selling like just these wholesale products. Then I got into the private label thing. When I first got into the private label thing, there weren't very many people doing it, so it was kind of like this blue water, like open strategy thing. It was pretty easy to launch new products, not other like private label sellers out there.
Right.
Of course, that's changed now. It is more competitive, which everyone's aware of, but it's still an excellent opportunity, and in my opinion, like the best opportunity out there.
Okay.
So the question was, what can where do I see it going? How can we kind of stay ahead of it? So now we just have to be like smarter, more data driven, and like better marketers, right? So with any industry, when it begins to mature, it kind of like weeds out like the people who aren't willing to like put in any time, or are really sloppy, or aren't doing a good job. They get weeded out, right? And that's with any industry as it matures.
Absolutely.
Just like Amazon has. So now we have to be smarter. Like I'm a very like data driven person, and I'm like a huge fan of that as far as like looking at the numbers, understanding the numbers, understanding what's working, what gets you sales. Junglescout obviously helps with that, but there's other sources that help with that a lot too. Like I mentioned, Google Trends. Like Keepler, Camo. There's like great sources for like data-driven type research or understanding of things.
Right.
And I actually don't think it's going to get much more like competitive than what it is right now, if you want my honest opinion.
Absolutely.
Amazon is like growing at a really fast rate, and I think the opportunity right now is kind of, like education or public knowledge about the opportunity right now. In my opinion, it's probably like kind of peaked. It's where it's at, and I think it probably did like a year ago. It's where it's at that it's like competitive enough that the people that are like pretty shy or aren't willing to put in their time aren't even going to try. Right. And the people are saying like, okay, like I am going to watch webinars like this. I am going to understand what's working right now. That kind of stuff. Or that's going to kind of like stay the same. So
absolutely.
I feel like it hasn't really got any like more competitive over the past year. I don't really foresee it getting more competitive in the future. Mm-hmm. We just have to be smarter and, do the things that probably like all your students or the things that you are doing now. Like, like optimizing our PPC, like having like really good pictures, right. Just doing a few of these like small things that make a big difference that the people who, like 3 or 4 years ago might not have done. They put up like one picture and just called it a day, and like we're getting sales from that.
And just expecting to become a millionaire overnight, right?
Yeah.
And something else that's maybe worth pointing out here too, guys, is the USA market. Everyone kind of thinks of Amazon as like being this like worldwide beast, right? But Amazon actually hasn't entered certain markets, right? So we still have huge amounts of expansion. Amazon has big plans to enter the Australian market, right, which is millions and millions of people. So as far as Amazon being, over competitive or saturated or like an opportunity of the past, really, you heard it from Greg, you heard it from me. That is absolutely not true. There's so much opportunity, so many millions of different, one-off niche products, different markets that Amazon still hasn't expanded into, and so it's absolutely as much of an opportunity. Maybe it's not quite as easy as it was years ago before, more people knew about it, but by no means is it over. It's absolutely thriving, and there's so much opportunity. So thank you for that answer. Let's go on to the next one. So this is kind of a long-winded question, but it's one that I get all the time, and I think it's important to kind of understand the distinction.
Okay.
So do you target keywords rather than products? And let me give you an example of what I mean. If you identify one strong product, right, through all of the filters that Junglescout allows you to, right, maybe it has 20 sales with 30K of monthly sales, but when you search the related keyword, you actually find that the first page of the Amazon search results is full of, thousands of reviews or people that have these huge barriers to entry. So can you discuss your thought process for once you do identify a single product to see if it's worth pursuing?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think this is something that it's kind of complicated, I think, because a lot of people kind of get hung up on it, right?
Yeah.
So I target a particular like product or niche and not necessarily a keyword. And the reason for this is, like, how are you going to know what all the keywords are that people are searching for to find this particular like type of product? So right here I have a camera lens, right? So like if I find that camera lenses are good opportunities, how do I know whether people are searching for what is this, like Sony camera lens, or are they searching for a 50 millimeter, or are they searching for like, there's dozens or if not hundreds of different like keywords that people are searching to land upon this particular camera lens, right?
Absolutely.
So, so what I do, I try to find a particular type of product or niche. Guess what like my 1 or 2 main keywords would be. So for this, I'd probably guess, since there are so many camera lenses, I'd probably guess one of my main keywords for this is like 50 millimeter camera lens. Or if I had this glass, like clear pint glass or something like that would be like my main keyword word, I think, for this particular glass. And that's where I then go on to try to understand what the demand and competition is for that particular keyword. So right. I would encourage you not to get too hung up in that stage, because people might, like, I think some people get stuck on saying, but wait, what if pint glass isn't the main keyword? What if it's really this or that or the other thing, and there's not very much demand on pack of 12 pint glasses or something right. like that? So I would encourage you like not to get hung up on that part. Just pick like the one or two what you think would be the major keywords and choose those and kind of gauge the demand and competition off that.
Right. Yeah, and that, I mean, that's great advice, right? So and there's ways to kind of verify, those guesses. Like there's services out there like Merchant Words, right? And those are estimated keyword volume, as all my students know, right? The only true source of keyword volume is from the search engines. So you can further verify through Google Keyword Planner, right? You want to make sure that you notice the discrepancies between Merchant Words and Google Keyword Planner, as Amazon is a buyer-centric product search platform, right? And Google is not necessarily geared 100% towards product research, right? So let's go on to the next question. Many of my students kind of ask me all the time about product research in the UK and sometimes other markets, right? So can you talk about how that is different from the USA product research, and any tips or tricks you use specifically with Junglescout, kind of to be able to do that international research, as it is, I'm sure, different in certain ways?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to start, people always ask this too, so I'll just say it. Junglescout works for all the North American stores, so that's Canada, US, and Mexico. All the EU stores, I'm not going to try to name them because I'll probably mess it up,
Yeah.
and in India.
Okay.
So I think that's like 9 or 10 marketplaces or whatever. So it works for all of those. If you've seen any of my webinars before, or podcasts, or whatever else, oftentimes I like talk about like this criteria. I look for like a certain, like a few thousand units of demand, like in the U.S. store. I do say like I'll tune back my demand and competition expectations for the less popular marketplaces. So that's really everything besides the U.S. So
Right.
the U.S. by far has the most amount of demand as well as competition. So like me personally, to enter a niche, I want to see in the U.S. like 3,000 units of demand. So if I'm looking at pint glasses, and unfortunately there's no beer in here, just water.
That's for tomorrow, right?
later tonight. I'm looking that there's like 3,000 units of these being sold throughout the entire niche on a monthly basis. Where if I'm
Right.
looking at one of the EU stores where there's less demand, then I'm going to be expecting less demand. So I might enter that niche in the EU if it has like 1,000 units of total demand or 1,500 units. So
Right.
I scale back those expectations, but I also expect it to be less competitive. So I expect to see less listings.
Exactly.
I expect to see less reviews on the listings. And then, that's what I recommend for everyone else watching this to do the same.
Right, yeah, and I mean, it's important to think about just the differences in culture too, guys, right? Because, you want to understand what the market is like, ready, right? If you live in England, then maybe you know a little bit more about the culture. You know that they might be more, attuned to drinking tea or having tea products, or, whatever it is, right? So use your personal knowledge as, an experiential advantage, for doing your product research in whatever market you do want to enter, right? And so that's great advice from Greg, everyone. So can you talk quickly, next question, can you talk quickly about the niche hunter within Junglescout, and what specific benefits a Junglescout user would get from using this feature rather than just using the Junglescout platform?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you're not familiar with it, Niche Hunter is one of the features inside of the Junglescout web app. So inside there's like 3 main features, right? There's like the product tracker, there's the product database, and there's this thing called the Niche Hunter. And just going real quick, we kind of talked about the product tracker, right? That does like the 999 trick, or
Right.
it estimates based on the best sellers rank and kind of tracks products. I'd say like kind of like look at products underneath a magnifying glass over a certain time frame.
Okay.
The product database, it's a catalog of all the Amazon's products with special filters, so it's easier for us sellers to kind of search through them. And then the Niche Hunter, it's a little bit different. So whereas the product database, we've rebuilt Amazon's catalog and just loaded in all the products and lets you search through them that way. With the Niche Hunter, we've taken real customer search terms. So these are real buyers in the search terms that they're using. And we've kind of like taken it a step further. We've taken that search term and then we've graded that search term, which is essentially a niche, right? We've graded that search term or the niche for how strong the demand is, how strong the competition is, how stout the quality of the listings are. So like, are there a whole bunch of high end listings there, or are they like crappy listings?
Right.
And then we also give it like an overall opportunity score. So this is just like another way to look for niches or type of products to go into. So, unfortunately, computers aren't quite smart enough to like just give you the absolute best opportunity on Amazon that specific day. I'm waiting for them to get there. We are starting to do some more machine learning stuff, which is really exciting, but it's not quite there yet. So you still do have to kind of weed through different like niches, right? Like one might be a T-shirt for an NFL sports team, and like since you're not licensed to sell that product, you can't really sell that. So it's like, okay, you have to skip to that one. So you still have to kind of like manually look through the different niches and see if they're good.
Right.
But we get you like a lot of the way there, right? Because we can tell how much demand's in there. We can tell how stout the competition is, how good approximately the opportunity is. So it's just another way to look for types of niches or products to go after.
Right. Okay, so a quick follow-up question on this. Some of my students were asking me to ask you. So when you are evaluating kind of the competitive landscape of a new potential niche that you are going to enter, what would you kind of rank maybe as like the top 3 barriers to entry, with pictures, descriptions, reviews? What would you say are the top 3 most important things to be looking at to be able to enter that market?
So like the things that I use to gauge competition off of?
Right, like so maybe you'd say like, the number one thing that's hardest to kind of come into a market and beat is reviews. Maybe the next might be really good pictures, right? Maybe the third might be, excellent copy in their bullets or something like that. What would you say is the number one most important kind of barrier to entry to coming into these new niches and kind of trying to, break in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I don't think I could quite say like one particular thing, but I can give you kind of like the package that I look at to gauge like how competitive a particular niche is.
Even better.
And, yeah, so like without a doubt, one's the number of reviews.
Absolutely.
And the number of reviews, so like you can outrank products that have like much higher like number of reviews than you, okay? So like that isn't necessarily an exact gauge of like how well a product ranks. We know that there's like lots of things that go into the A9 algorithm.
Absolutely.
But it is a good indicator of maturity of the listing and like how many units the listing's selling. So if we think about big picture right here, what we need to be successful on Amazon is we need to organically rank well for for a lot of the search terms, right? Or a lot of the search terms that buyers will be searching for to purchase our product. So I guess what we can be thinking about is what do I need to do to outrank those or like rank well for my search terms?
Right.
So to beat people in their rankings, like if we reverse engineer this, it's like, what do we need to do to beat people in their rankings? So one would be we need sales velocity. So our product needs to be selling well. We know for a fact that's one of the major things that Amazon takes into account in their rankings. We need a good conversion rate. To get a good conversion rate, there's a whole bunch that goes into that. There's social proof, there's good pictures, there's a good title, there's good product descriptions.
Right.
We need to rank well for keyword relevancy. So we need to make sure that we're being indexed for our keywords that we want to be selling under. So knowing and understanding all that, the things that we can be looking for to see whether or not there's listings that we can beat out, we need to be looking to see like what's their sales history and sales velocity like, and number of reviews is a great gauge for that. We need to be thinking like how much social proof do they have, which leads to a higher conversion rate. Number of reviews is a great one for that. Right. So that's why it's very important to me. The other things that I'm looking at are how good are my competitors' listings? Because I want the conversion rate of my listing to be better than my competitors. Right. So if they have crappy listings with like 1 or 2 pictures, which there's still a lot of listings on Amazon like that, then that's much easier for me to outrank them. So yeah, those are the types of things I'm looking at. I'm looking at like how good are the listings, how many reviews do they have. I'd be probably looking at like how many sellers are there for this particular item. Like a good indicator if I'm trying to, since this is like the theme of the night, the pint glass. If I search pint glass and on that page, Amazon's starting to show me irrelevant search results. So if I search for pint glass and Amazon's starting to show me there's like little table coasters that you put glasses on, right, or I don't know, some other like kitchen appliance or whatever, that means like there's not a lot of what Amazon believes are relevant products for that particular search term. So again, that'd be like a good indicator that it's not a super competitive niche.
And that is an incredible point that I will personally admit I've never thought about, and I'm definitely going to do a lot of research on once we do end this webinar. So thank you so much for that. That is an incredible answer, and very detailed answer, so appreciate that. Let's go on. So we have one more question, and then we're going to kind of take a little bit of a deep dive into showing you how the Junglescout founder himself does product research on the platform. So this is the final question before we do that, so definitely stay around if you are interested in seeing that. So the question is, with other software popping up kind of as competition, Amaze Owl, Unicorn Smasher, Viral Intelligence's new product, Market Intelligence, can you talk about first how some of these competitors can offer their platforms for free, and then second, how Junglescout differentiates itself from some of these new guys kind of popping up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at to build like let's just say like a pretty like mediocre like product research platform, it's not really like super difficult, and because of that, it's a relatively like low barrier of entry to build like a pretty like mediocre or maybe kind of like poor quality like platform. So I'll just start by kind of like saying that.
Right.
To build a very like high end platform with like strong data integrity and accuracy is like so much harder. So just to give you an idea, like Kevin and I were talking about this for the webinar, but there's over 30 people now working at Junglescout.
Amazing.
Like we have a PhD on our team who's a data scientist. So like his job is to be working on the accuracy of our sales estimates and the integrity of our data and a lot of those things. We have, not to like bore you guys like all the technical stuff, like the amount
it's important.
of kind of like work we do like behind the scenes to make sure this data is like accurate and good. It's pretty incredible that like most people wouldn't understand, and I don't expect you to just, that's no big thing, but what you need to kind of be thinking about is like for me personally, at least, like when I think about this, like who cares like if data or like numbers that you're given are free if they're not accurate? So
absolutely,
because that could potentially be like a pretty detrimental like blow to your business. And if I just give you an example, like what if I have my Junglescout sunglasses here? What if like I download like a competitor's product or someone else's product that maybe has like pretty like poor quality data, and they tell me that Junglescout orange sunglasses are selling like 10,000 units a month like throughout the niche. So I'm thinking like sweet, then I'm gonna plop down like $3,000 of my own capital so I can order like a few thousand of these Junglescout sunglasses. But then I get in to find out that, it's actually only like 10 units a month instead of like 10,000.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, you got the data for free, but like I just wasted like
$3,000
of my capital. So that's why like I really encourage you guys, and like on our blog we're pretty public about like our data science, like a lot of things that go into it, and we're pretty transparent about that. And I'd encourage you guys, like if you're thinking about some of the competitors, not want to like bash them and say like they're all garbage, but I would like encourage you guys to like ask them the tough questions. It's like, like what do you do to accurately estimate unit sales? Like what's your team like? What's maybe like some of the science behind it? Some of those things. And like oftentimes what you'll find is it's pretty weak. It's kind of more so just like a rough estimate, but and like their selling proposition, instead of like the quality of the data and the accuracy of the data, is that it's free. So I would just, you've asked me the question. I would encourage anyone listening or watching this, like, why don't you go out there and ask some of the other platforms to tell you a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. No, and this is exactly why when people ask me, why would I pay, X amount of dollars for Junglescout when I could get this for free? My answer is always the same thing, because Junglescout is giving you guys the most accurate data out there of any software platform. And I'm not just saying this because I'm, talking with Greg. It's because I really believe in the software. I was using Junglescout as a user before I had ever met Greg, right? And so you really have to kind of weigh the benefits and costs of getting that, incorrect or potentially, data that's not so, perfect as far as the accuracy, right? Because it's so important to establish that pattern of sales using the Junglescout product tracker, right? Using the 999 cart method. You can't just take a look at like an immediate sales metric from any of these software, right? Because it could be a giveaway that's distorting the overall BSR of those monthly sales, right? So it's very important to look at a trend, look at the product tracker, sales data for yourself, right? Don't make any rash decisions as far as product research goes, because it's a very long-term type thing, right? If you're going to invest your own capital, you want to be sure in it, and the way to be sure is by having the most accurate data, and the way to get that most accurate data is by using the best software, which in my opinion is Junglescout, right? And so let's go into the most exciting portion of the training. We are going to actually show Greg performing some Junglescout research live. So while I ask you the question, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to share your screen. So a common concern that I hear from all of my students is that with so many people, on Junglescout, on Amazon FBA now, sometimes people could kind of be using Junglescout with the same or similar filters that a lot of the Amazon, people out there are kind of teaching, right? And so with all of these people looking at maybe some of the same filters, how can we be sure that we're not all looking at the same products? So would you, if you'd be so kind, take us through some of the kind of out-of-the-box creative ways to use Junglescout, one or even maybe two steps further than most people are using to identify products, so we can really find those true diamond-in-the-rough type products?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to confirm, can you see my screen?
I can, yeah.
All right, excellent. So, so what we're looking at right now, this is the Junglescout product databases inside of the web app. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I'll just go over. I think everyone watching this maybe have a little bit of an idea, like product research 101.
Yeah, absolutely.
If not, then maybe one of the other videos on our site or something would be better for you guys. So during this, I'll kind of cover maybe a little bit more advanced stuff, or
exactly,
some
yeah,
stuff that a lot of people aren't talking about.
Sure.
One of the ways that one of the things that I really like to do, and I wouldn't say this is a great hidden secret. There's definitely people out there doing it, but definitely not enough. Is to be looking for products that need. There's a few different things here, but the first one would be looking for products that need some improvements. Okay, so just think if we're looking at products that are selling well, even though they have a crappy review rating. This is an excellent opportunity for you, right, to sell the same thing, except make some small improvements on it. So we can just say hey, only show me products that are selling at least 500 units a month, even though the rating's less than. And I'll give you a little trick here. I'm going to say 3.7 stars. At so Amazon rounds when you're looking at. Let me show you what I'm talking about here real quick. So Amazon rounds when they're looking at when they fill in the number of stars here, right? So this seller has 2.8 out of 5, but it's visually the consumers are seeing 3 stars. Here, this guy has 4.7, but they're seeing 4.5, right? That kind of sucks because it's pretty close to 5, but people aren't seeing it. But that's good to think about when you're searching things, because I'm going to say, show me everything that has 3.7 or less, because visually a consumer is seeing that's 3.5 stars. So real quick, we could just look at some of these. I'm gonna go through this kind of quickly. Like I said, expecting that you guys already know about this a little bit.
Right.
And then through here, we can be looking at these products, and we can be saying which ones look relatively simple that I can make improvements to.
Right.
So this looks like a pretty simple product right here. I can look at it on Amazon. I can go down. I can take a look at the reviews.
Right.
This has a ton of 1-star reviews. So it's okay, what do we need to do to make this thing better? Barely holds a seat together. The worst slings ever for pool noodles. The fabric doesn't stay on. Doesn't come with noodles. So just after reading that for 10 seconds, it seems like people are under the impression that it either comes with noodles, so we can pretty easily improve that by just saying that, maybe graying that out and making it very clear that all you get here is the sling.
Right.
It looked like the other thing was that this fabric either tears easily or doesn't stay on. So maybe I ask my factory in China to on the back side of this to put a little bit of rubber or something else so it doesn't slide around as easily.
Right.
Or I don't know. If you give me a few more minutes, I could probably think of some more ways for it to stay on.
No, definitely.
Yeah, fabric quality is super easy, right? It's like you just talk to the factory. It's like, hey, I want something like thicker or heavier duty. That's super easy for them to like put something else on there.
So wait,
Um,
while I have you, a
yeah,
common question that my students ask all the time, and would hate me if I didn't ask you, is so if you wanna source a product from Alibaba, but you want like some custom alterations, how are you going about doing that, right? So if you see a product and you want to make some changes to it, but maybe no factory is advertising that they do those exact things, how are you going about making those custom changes and kind of making the product your own and adding that value?
yeah. So I just work with the factories, and I usually talk about that when I initially reach out to them
Right,
to go ahead and weed out the people who aren't going to be working with me. So I just launched a product like 2 weeks ago, which where I did this too.
right,
It's called Jungle Snugs. So this is like thicker fabric than my competitors, right?
right,
So my competitors, in some of the bad reviews, it said like this fabric thickness is measured in like GSM, grams per square meter. Their fabric was like 300 GSMs, and they're getting bad reviews saying that that it was like too thin, right?
right.
So when I reached out to these factories, so I went on Alibaba, I searched for hooded baby towels, and when I reached out to these factories, I said, hey, I'm looking for like a hooded baby towel, the bamboo material, this, that, and the other thing, and I want a thicker fabric. So I didn't specifically specify 500 GSM instead of 300.
Right.
I was trying to like work with them. It's like, what other fabrics do you have available, or could you like make for this? So
Yeah.
some factories were like, oh, all we have is 300 GSM. If you want thicker, like the MOQ is like 1 billion units because we have to like make a whole new roll of fabric. I don't know how fabric's made, but
Yeah.
and then one other factory was like, oh, well, we actually do have a roll of 500 GSM fabric we can use. I'm like, okay, sweet, perfect. So my advice to you would be to go ahead and put like what type of alterations you're going to make in your initial email with them,
Right.
and leave it like fairly open-ended. So if we go back to the example of, let's see, we're looking at like pool noodles. Instead of like the thicker fabric thing, or the thicker like sling thing, would be fairly easy. You just say like, hey, I want like a heavier duty like fabric. What do you have available for that?
Right.
But instead of saying like, hey, I want to put rubber on the inside of these, I'd probably start off with saying like, I want floating, I don't know what these things are called, noodle seats, whatever.
Yeah.
I'd say like, I want a way for my noodle seats to stay on better, and open it up with just like that. And maybe they already have an idea, or maybe they already have like a modification they've done before that they can hook you up with. If not, you could say like, could you put rubber on the inside of those so it's like has better traction than just the nylon or whatever does. So yeah, that'd be my advice for it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is one way to use the web app that, surprisingly enough, not enough people do,
Right.
because I don't know why. This is like a fantastic way to find. Like I've never seen pool noodle seats before. I never would have thought of that product or thought to improve that product without it. So that's like something pretty cool.
And it's interesting to look at too, guys, that Greg's not using 3.75 and he's not using 20, right? Because everyone out there, humans, it's just human nature to make round numbers, right? You want to put in 3.75, you want to put in 4, you want to put in $20. So he's changing that up to see different products that you guys might not otherwise see by using those round numbers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something else that I commonly do is use like the listing quality. So anyone not familiar with this, we rank all the quality of all the listings on Amazon between 1 and 100. I was actually just today I was working on a new algorithm to update this. But so like a score of lower scores like pretty bad. So let's just say like a score of like, I don't know, 35. And like from what I know, I don't think a lot of people even use this at all. But so we'll say like at least like $18. Let's say estimated sales is, let's do something pretty high. Let's do like 1,000 units. So this thing's selling 1,000 units a month, even though it has a really crap listing.
Right.
And it's above $18. So we'll see what kind of results we have. And again, right, like some of these, like I'm not going to sell Nike shoes, right? So we can skip right over that.
Yep.
However, I'm sure there are some products, and I didn't even filter by category, but I could do that to weed out a lot of these. Like hinges. This is something that's like pretty strange. I never would have thought of, right?
Right, like
Um,
necessity type items that people are going to buy regardless of whether, the listing is well made or not. Maybe you could come in, create that, that listing optimization that they're not worried about doing because they know people are buying it anyway.
Yeah, so this is crazy, right? This thing's selling like 12 or 1300 units per month. It has 1 star. It has like, probably hardly any of their main keywords used here because like their title's pretty short, their
Yeah.
bullet points are pretty short.
Yeah.
If I scroll down here, like there's like a crappy product description, right? It's like 3 sentences. I could easily make a really high end one with lots of keywords. I can
Right.
do enhanced brand content. So this is something that is like I think is like easily disruptable. If this guy is selling 1300 units per month, um, with like this really crappy listing, it's like, guys, if you launch these door hinges with like a really nice listing, it's like you could easily steal probably like all of his sales.
Right. Exactly.
So that's a pretty cool way to use it that like not a lot of people are doing.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Yes, that's one little tip. One a couple cool ways to use the extension that not a lot of people do is I don't like. I'm a huge fan of this, but I guess I don't talk about it too often, and most people I talk to don't really do it. But you can go to a seller's storefront. You can click on the extension there, and this is going to pull in all the different products that this particular seller is selling. Right.
Right.
So I like doing this, especially on like private label sellers, and they're pretty easy to pick out once you kind of know what you're doing with private label sellers, right? Because they're doing like the bullet points, the first words, all caps, and it's kind of easy to start picking them out.
Right.
But this guy, it looks like is just it doesn't look like this is like a private label seller from what I can tell. They're probably just sourcing from a wholesaler or something. But
Right.
I really like doing this on a private label seller. You can sort it by estimated sales, and then you can see what some other sellers' best-selling products are, right? So we can do an example real quick. Let's just search for like what's something that a lot of private label sellers are doing. Watermelon slicer.
My students are laughing right now, Greg, because this is one of like the main product research methods, or one of the few main ones in the course, and what I've kind of taught on YouTube myself that I've found so many kind of diamonds in the rough.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
and hardly anyone does this. I'm
I
really
know.
glad actually that you're teaching them that because it works really well, right?
And there's so far down the rabbit hole to go through this, 'cause it's basically infinite.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So this guy, he only has one product, but yeah. So if you have seen this class, you already know what I'm going to do here. But
Right.
yeah, it's like infinite, right?
Yeah.
There's tons and there's tons to do.
Right.
So yeah, those are like a few of probably my favorite things that most people out there aren't doing, and really help you find kind of a little bit more like obscure products that probably a lot of people aren't searching for. I'll also just say like. I wish Junglescout had like 1 billion users or whatever, but the number of users even in Junglescout is so tiny compared to like A, how many sellers are on Amazon, and B, how many customers are on Amazon.
Right.
Even if we had like, let's say like 100,000 users, it's like that would still be like a very small fraction of a percentage of like how many sellers are on Amazon and how many buyers are on Amazon. So It's like, there's still like there's just such an abundance of opportunities on Amazon that I wouldn't get too hung up on thinking that like everyone else is selling the same thing, unless it's the watermelon slicer or the fidget spinner
or the garlic press.
or the garlic press.
Okay, cool. So we have like 5 minutes left. I have some students that are absolutely dying to ask you a couple more questions, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
So one of the questions that I get all the time is, I'm trying to kind of get my feet wet in Amazon FBA, but I don't necessarily have the upfront capital to get these like big MOQs, right? 1,000 units, 2,000, 5,000. What is a kind of way that you've found maybe to get that MOQ down a bit for, maybe new sellers or people who are on a little bit more of a budget with factories?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like a small little kind of like hack you can do is you can tell them this is like a test order, which that's not even really like a lie, right? Like any like first order is kind of going to be a test order.
Yeah.
So like what I'll often say is, like we like to build relationships slowly. We want to make sure that it's like of high quality. So we want to start off with like 100-unit test order. If that works out, I'll have much larger orders in the future. And that's not even a lie, right? Because that's true. You want to make sure that's good quality. And if it does well and starts selling really well on Amazon, you are going to order a whole bunch. So that's something you can do. Um, Oftentimes you can. All right. So one thing to think about is um, if you're doing small MOQs, don't expect a bunch of modifications, especially if like a new mold has to be made or this, that, or the other thing.
Right.
So that's one thing you need to keep in mind if you're only have enough capital for a smaller MOQ. Something else to keep in mind, and I've been fortunate enough to get to go to I've been to like China like 3 times. I've visited a whole bunch of my suppliers, and it kind of really opened up to my eyes like the difference of some of these factories. So some of these factories are just like huge, right? Like so big, like a billion people working in them.
Yeah.
And those types of factories are not a good fit for a small seller. They're not interested in doing a run of 100 units, right?
Right.
But then I've been to like some of my other factories, and I don't have very many of those like giant ones because they don't really want to work with people like me. They want to work with like Walmart and Home Depot and other people.
Right.
But I've been to some of my other factories, and there's just like 20 people working there, and it's like a 2,000 square foot like a small factory, and they're doing like these smaller orders. Like those are a better fit for like people who want to do like smaller MOQs. So on Alibaba, like half the information on Alibaba's garbage, right? Because
Right.
they just like filled in themselves. So a lot of it's like not very accurate. But you want to be looking for factories that have like smaller capacities, and then after that, it's just kind of like reaching out and finding ones to work with, right? Because the small factories that only do have 10 or 20 people working there and these small production lines and stuff, they're happy about doing an order for like 100 units or 200 units or whatever, right? But if it's this huge factory with 900 people working there, it's like they can't run that through their production line. That just doesn't make sense to them. So it's a lot of it's about factory fit is what I'm getting at.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's a great answer. I'm getting a bunch of messages again because I actually have a script that's literally how to ask for a test order to test the quality before a larger order. So I'm loving that we're on the similar wavelengths here.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an excellent course.
Thank you. I hope so. I think my students would hopefully agree. So we're going to ask Greg one last question, and then we're going to give you guys a very special offer to be able to kind of save some money getting Junglescout, getting the best product research tool out there with all of the most accurate data. So what I personally want to know is, could we maybe have any hint of new software, new features that we might see from the Junglescout team? Are we ever going to see like a merchant words type clone for keywords kind of in the platform and ecosystem itself, or are there any hints that you might be able to give us as far as where you guys are going kind of in the future?
Yeah, good question. I don't think I saw this in the list of questions you sent me an hour before, did I? No, I'm happy to share that. As you know, I'm a pretty like transparent guy. So there are some really exciting things I don't think I've ever shared with like the general public. This will be the first time. So
there you go, guys.
One would be we've been working really hard the past month on a brand new extension that it was actually like the first alpha version was given to our UX designer today to go through and look at the design, make sure it's adequate. After that, there's a few more tests before we're ready to release it to the public, but you can probably expect that in the next couple weeks as long as there's no major bugs or anything like big found.
Right.
And it's nice. I like it a lot. It gives some like new pieces of data that no one else is doing.
Right.
It's also just kind of like a fresh coat of paint. It looks nice, a little bit better user experience. So you can look forward to that. And of course, all updates are always included with anyone who owns any of our stuff. So if you have another extension, it's not like you have to buy anything else. One day you'll just see this beautiful new extension that you'll love. So that's really cool. Really excited about that. We're not coming out with any other software platforms anytime in the foreseeable future. So as you know, we have like Junglescout, which is the product research platform. We have JumpSend, which does email automation. It's also a deal site to help you boost your sales.
Right.
Fetcher is the profit analytics and accounting, and Splitly is an A/B testing tool specifically for Amazon sellers. So we have those 4 platforms, and what we decided about like a year ago, as we're like building out more platforms, is that we really wanted to double down on the quality of everything that we're doing, as opposed to like expanding more horizontally. So a lot of our focus is on Junglescout, but also making sure the other apps are good. It's like we don't want any just like mediocre applications or pieces of software. It's like everything we do, we want people to say like Junglescout is without a doubt the best in the business at this accomplishing this one task. So we've really been doubling and tripling down on just like the quality of everything that we're doing.
Right.
So like another little thing that I haven't actually shared with anyone else is, earlier we talked about the sales estimates stuff. We hired a new engineer, let's see, about like 2 months ago. That was like that's has some excellent experience and is really good with a lot of kind of like forward thinking, like big data, machine learning, and like the artificial intelligence stuff. And what we're working on right now to like estimate our sales is going to just be like, it's a lot better than what we have, but it's just going to be like leaps and bounds better than everyone else, because it's going to be like a very like dynamic sales estimates. Like if you check multiple times in the same day, it's going to be a little bit different because it's like always adjusting. Not to like nerd out on you guys like too much, but it's
we love it. I love it.
Like literally it's like it's going to be processing billions of data points every single day, monitoring all the sales in all the different categories and marketplaces through like the days and seasons and weeks, and just doing a lot more like advanced stuff to like really give you guys like this really accurate information. So that's something that like I'm really excited about. We've been working really hard on lately. There's just we have, let's see, I think we have 11 engineers right now. So like we're constantly always doing lots of small updates and small features and all this kind of stuff. But that'd be a few like the big things I'm really excited about right now.
Cool. Thank you, man. Hey, well, that's what you want, first of all, in a software founder, right? He's not charging you for the updates like, a lot of people do, and they're doubling down on, increasing the quality rather than trying to put out all of these different systems that aren't necessarily quite ready yet. And we got two never heard before, fresh from Greg's mouth, about, some of the Junglescout secrets. So you heard it here first, guys. And so let's give them the offer. Greg has been kind enough to extend an offer of the discount for Junglescout for everyone out there watching. The offer is available, you guys, at www.junglescout.com/Kevin, right? And so if you guys are interested, if you want to get into the Amazon FBA space, or you haven't taken the plunge to get Junglescout, maybe you've been using some of the free software out there, but you want to get more serious and you want to kind of, make sure that you're getting all of the best available data, head over to www.junglescout.com/Kevin. I'm going to have it available in the description in the YouTube video, and again, once we share it on Facebook. So, Greg, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It's so amazing to be talking to you. You're the first person I found. I think of you as kind of my own Amazon mentor. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks a lot for having me on. It's been a really good hour, and I really appreciate everyone tuning in.
Absolutely, man. So we will talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Take care.